Leadership can be incredibly lonely, especially when you're taught that strength means having it all together. After years of leading in uniform, retired U.S. Air Force Colonel DeDe Halfhill realized that the leadership style that got her there wasn't the one that would sustain her or the people she led. In this conversation, we unpack what happens when leaders choose authenticity over armor, clarity over control, and soft power over force. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Soft Power Project. And today we have an amazing guest that I'm really manifested this for a whole year. It's DeDe Halfhill, and she is actually a retired U.S. Air Force colonel. She's a keynote speaker and advisor to help leaders to master the unseen, which is the messy, the human side of leadership. And I just felt like you are the perfect guest for this show because I absolutely wanted to know your transition, your leadership styles, and how does that influence your own leadership styles for yourself. So, hi, DeDe.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Your career is absolutely incredible, and I just felt like when I saw you on Simon Sinek's podcast, and I'm just in awe, and I could not believe that, wow, a woman in the Air Force as a colonel, and for such a long period of time, that must have been such an incredible experience, but also how that affect you as a woman, as a leader. Also, how do you lead yourself? So yeah, would you just like to kind of open up a little bit about that journey for you?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned something before we were talking just
Hmm.
about kind of how do we lean into who we really are as leaders? How do we lead in a way that is authentic to us? And when I look back on my Air Force journey, I think everything, if I had to sum up the journey, it was that becoming. It was finding myself in an environment that had traditionally prized leadership, showing up a very specific way, very guarded, stoic, hierarchical. And for the longest time, I thought I had to lead the same way. And I did. And for a while, that worked until it didn't. Until I got to a point where the leadership responsibility was so big that I could no longer lean on leadership behaviors that I was basically mimicking from others. And if I was going to be successful, I had to really lean into leadership in a way that felt authentic to me because mimicking took way too much energy. Authenticity allowed me to reserve the energy for the stuff that actually mattered. So I think it was such a, I've never actually even said that out loud before. But when I think about the journey, that was really it. It became a journey of practicing in a way that I thought others wanted me to lead until I was comfortable and confident enough to lead in a way that was really all about who I am and what I uniquely bring as a human being with all the experiences I've had in my life. So, yeah, it was a wonderful journey. I'm super grateful for it.
Hmm. And I can assume that it has to be really, really tough as well because you are in that environment. And, just from my personal experience, I feel like it's hard to make that switch, right? You kind of had this in between space where you're kind of both, but not really both, and you're kind of finding your footing. What was that like for you to kind of have that transition in the in between while still being the leader in that environment?
I often get the question, it must have been so hard being a woman in a very male dominated environment. And I was really lucky, and I think this is not to minimize others' experience because I do think every person's experience is unique and every person's experience is different based on the circumstances and their surroundings. I was actually super lucky in that I worked with, around, and for really amazing leaders, men and women. And while most of the people I was around were men, I worked for men who really, in some ways, allowed that becoming to happen because they really believed in me. And candidly, I didn't join the military with a ton of confidence. Like I joined the military thinking I was going to get money for I was going to, be able to pay for college. And I didn't necessarily have a lot of self-trust and a lot of self-belief, but I worked for leaders very early on who saw in me something I didn't see in myself. And over time, my confidence grew, my ability to stand in my own belief grew. And I think it was because of those men that when I finally reached the point where, like I said earlier, mimicking no longer worked for me, they had instilled in me such a belief in myself that making that transition and deciding to lead in a way that was very authentic for me didn't feel like a huge leap because they had really supported me in the other ways I had grown as a leader and the other ways I had grown as a professional. And I'll give you an example. I think when I think back about the transition, it's like when I kind of had that moment, that realization moment of this is not working. The way I'm leading now is not working for me was actually when I was in Iraq. I was a squadron commander over there. And, in an environment like that, in a combat environment, a deployed environment, nothing ever goes as planned. Resources are always limited. People are always on edge and things just weren't working. I wasn't seeing the behavior out of my team that I thought a good leader would get. And I was doing all the things that I thought were right. I was really holding the line of accountability. I was really setting expectations. I was being direct and decisive. I was setting a vision. And so I was doing all these things, and yet people were still showing up as people and weren't always showing up in a way that was helpful. And I remember thinking, like, it shouldn't be this hard. I don't feel like I'm succeeding. I don't feel like I'm doing very well. To be really candid, I'm like, I'm the worst thing that's ever happened to the United States Air Force. Like, I'm the worst leader that's ever happened to the United States Air Force. And I remember being in my quarters one night, my room one night, and I remember thinking, this isn't the experience I thought this would be. I'm not showing up as the leader I thought I would, and I'm not enjoying it. And if I'm not enjoying it, and if I'm actually failing, what is most important to me? And the very first thought that came to me was, what's most important to me is that my team knows that what they're doing here matters, that the contribution they're making matters, and that they matter. And I went out the next day letting go of any measure of success and decided instead to put my entire focus on, do these people know they matter? And that shift really changed everything. Suddenly, I started noticing that people were opening up more. I started noticing that people were coming to me more with ideas, that people were coming to me earlier when things weren't going like maybe we had hoped. They were sharing that faster so that we could fix small problems before they became big problems. So when I stopped focusing all of the things that I had been told were important about leadership, and they are. I'm not saying those things aren't important. And as a leader, you have to do them. But I was doing them absent of the human side of it. And once I figured out how to really incorporate the mattering, the idea that you are valued, the idea that your humanity is valued, everything shifted. And I think probably there are lots of leaders out there who have found themselves in that place. But for me, it meant letting go of fear. It meant letting go of being who I thought they wanted me to be and instead leaning on what I knew to be true.
And I think that's such an incredible shift. And I have to ask you, is that a lot of times when we realize that when something isn't working and we know that we have to make the change, but I mean, from personal experience and sometimes from my observation, is that we tend to spiral in that moment because a lot of negative self talk, the fear, the uncertainty, because it is uncertain, because it's different. The discomfort comes, but I think for you, you were able to quickly just transition and not letting those self-talk and those negative talks to get you down. What's that like? Because I do feel like you had that incredible way to kind of just like, okay, this is not working, let's go. What do we do in that kind of situation for any listeners out there?
Don't get me wrong, looking back on it, it makes it sound like it was super easy and the transition was really quick. It wasn't. It was filled with a lot of doubt. It was filled with a lot of fear. It was really constantly questioning, like, why is this so hard? Why am I so bad at it? And I think I'm only able to look back on it now, but this was 2010, so almost 16 years ago. That feels so long ago. It's only looking back on it now where I'm able to see the journey. But in the middle of that journey, it was not comfortable. And for me, it was really I would say probably like a human survival mechanism because I was tired of beating myself up all the time. I was tired of feeling like I was failing all the time. There was a moment when I was over there where I was really kind of at I was at rock bottom as far as like, I'm not good at this. All the self talk you talk about, right? And I had called up a friend and I was really upset. And I was expressing my fear and doubt the way a lot of women do. And I was crying on the phone, like, this is so much harder than I thought it would be. I don't know why. I feel like I'm just not being very successful. I feel like I'm not inspiring my team. I feel like I'm not motivating my team. And he kind of stopped me and he said, DeDe, we all feel like that. And I was like, what? Like, why did no one tell me? Because that's what we do as leaders, right? We stand up and we tell people, this is what good leadership looks like. And we very rarely acknowledge the truth, which is most of the time, there is fear, there is uncertainty, there is doubt, there is imposter syndrome. Like, I don't know hardly any leaders who are not struggling. And I work with a lot of leaders in a very open and intimate setting, one on one, where they are honest with me about what they're thinking, about what they're feeling, about the doubts that come up, about where they're struggling. And I have yet to meet a leader who is 100%, I have this all locked down, figured out. But we don't talk about that side. And so it was that moment when he said to me, DeDe, we all feel like that, that honestly, I kind of let myself off the hook a little, which made that transition a little easier. It made that push to being the leader I was internally. Like, who do I want to be? And how do I want to be thought of as a leader? How do I want to be perceived as a leader? What are the qualities I would want someone to say about me as a leader? And then how do I now live into that? How do I show up in those behaviors? But it wasn't until I let myself off the hook a little and I redefined what was really important to me. And that was a process. It wasn't like suddenly I was, you know, rainbows and unicorns. I was still in Iraq and it was still hard, but I relied on a different skill set.
But I like what you said about that you let yourself off the hook. It's like you're giving yourself a lot of grace in that
Mhm.
period of time. And I think that's, in a way, that's self care in a leadership situation. And speaking of that fear of uncertainty, I feel like I absolutely have to ask this because, we just went through 2025. And I think without a doubt, a lot of people, like majority of the people felt that that was such a year of the snake year, the shedding, the uncertainty, AI, how's that going to impact our work? Do you think that 2025 helped because of the circumstance, because of the reality, kind of pushed leaders to really understand that the way they communicate uncertainty has to be different. It really doesn't have to be like, I need to have all the answers, but really lean into the discomfort and the vulnerability of it.
Tell me a little bit more about the year of the snake and the shedding. Like, how has that showed up for you?
Okay, so I'm in a wellness space, so we do talk a lot about that. So maybe I'm in a bubble, but in Chinese astrology, we had the year of snake. I mean, so next year is going to be the year of fire horse. I mean, I don't know too much about it, but I think a lot of people are feeling that the shedding because it's a year of snake. So you do shed a lot. You have to get rid of a lot of things that's no longer working. And that process had been incredibly uncomfortable. And I think in 2025, I've seen a lot of my friends in corporations where layoffs after layoffs were happening. So I think a lot of change and a lot of not sure what's happening. I think that's quite prevalent and at least in my world and a lot of what I'm seeing. So I think in my previous job, tech, the beauty space, cosmetic, that was really largely impacted, especially in 2025. Yeah, that's my experience from my side.
I love that. I mean, honestly, I had not heard of the year of this. I mean, I had
Okay.
not heard that it was year of the snake last year. And I think, wow, like that just makes a lot of like that whole metaphor makes a lot of sense. The leaders I'm working with, I see so much shedding of which Brene Brown calls armor, right? These things we do to help protect protect our hearts, protect who we are, protect the image people have of us. And I've seen so many people who are coming forward and they're saying, that's not who I want to be anymore. As a keynote speaker, I'm out in groups all the time. And I share a story, the same story I shared with Simon, just about this idea of how disconnected and lonely we might feel at work. And I have so many people come up to me and share their own struggle with feeling alone. And I think that loneliness is coming from the fact that we all have been wearing a skin that is a skin of who we want people to think we are. And that skin, to put it in the metaphor of Year of the Snake, is too heavy. It's no longer serving us. It's no longer protecting us. And until we get rid of it, we can't really connect the way we need to connect so we don't feel that loneliness anymore. I have mostly men coming up to me when I'm on the road after a keynote, sharing how much they can relate to that feeling and how alone they feel at work. I think that feeling comes from a sense of pressure that is entirely what you believe to be on your shoulders, right? Like as leaders, we think we're responsible for everything. I think it comes from the fact that everything is changing so fast and that we don't have a lot of answers. And because we don't have a lot of answers, we feel disconnected from the people who need those answers. We don't want to see them hurt because of a lack of information, right? We know how frustrating that is. And so we feel really alone because we can't calm that fear. We can't answer to that uncertainty. And I think the more we let go of that skin of we have to have all the answers, we have to be the ones who save the day, the more we will have support in finding collective answers, in finding collective solutions. So I think it's so interesting that this whole idea of letting go, right? And releasing something that isn't serving us. I don't know a ton about snakes and their, skin turnover process, but it certainly resonates with me. I mean, I can feel it.
Mm. Yeah, it's just so funny that I'm like, I talk about that as if everyone understands it. But it's
That's all
okay. But
right.
yeah, I mean, this is great. But I think that's why I think so many people are so looking forward for the next year. So like next month, it's going to be the year of horse. Horse means, boldness and making decisions finally, and things are moving quickly. The momentum gets back here again. But I just kind of feel like, just like what you said, so many leaders are, they have to admit that I don't know. I really don't know the answer. And what do you usually say to people in that kind of situation is that I'm so scared. I don't know what's happening. I literally don't have the answer. And reaching that, okay, let's have a collective solution. Because I like the word that you use, collective solution. How do you go from this fear and then kind of rally everyone like let's together find that solution?
I always believe in I work with so many leaders who are like, I can't get up there and just be like completely honest. I think I would freak my team out, right? They would be so scared. If I said how scared I am, they would be so scared. And I'm not asking leaders to stand up in front of their teams and be like, I'm so scared, I have no idea what I'm doing, even though like that may be what we feel. I think there, as leaders, we have to be both honest and we have to moderate. And
Mm,
so it's a little bit about vulnerability with guardrails a little bit where, boundaries, vulnerability with boundaries. Like I can come home and I can talk to my partner and say, I'm so scared. I have no clue what I'm doing. But at work, that might sound like, hey, listen, I want to acknowledge like all of us are processing this uncertainty. And it's probably safe to say that there's a little bit of fear in all of us. I know I have my own. But what I also know is that we do really well when we come together. We do really well when we support one another. And I don't know about you, but when I'm doing something hard, it's so much easier when I'm doing it with someone. And so, how do we come together? How do we have the kinds of conversations we need to have to get to the root problem, to come up with new solutions? Because we can't let fear get in our way. We can't let fear stop us. So, I'm still acknowledging the fear, but I'm doing so in a very calm, moderated way. It's not just standing up there going, oh my gosh, I'm so afraid I have no clue what I'm doing, which I do feel most of the time. And I also feel steady and I feel grounded and I feel supported when I'm with others. So how do I lean on that more than the scary gremlin that's driving a lot of my uncertainty?
that's such a that's such an amazing method because I think you're really leaning into the balance of it all, right? And I love the word you use, boundaries, because my goodness, I feel like that has come up so much in my own leadership path, even though I was only leading like a small team, like a team of 10, but boundaries, like I had to relearn how to even do that because I grew up as more like a people pleaser. I always had to perform and make sure everyone is good, everyone's happy. So I always feel like I just have to keep doing and keep agreeing and shifting my values as I go. So relearning how to actually set boundaries and hold boundaries, that was the
Mm,
toughest thing. And you're saying that in that kind of situation, you do have to have boundaries, managing up, managing down. So what do you usually do when it comes to someone who doesn't quite know what boundary means? Because I actually realize a lot of us don't. It's not a practice we do. Not sure how to set it and actually not sure how to hold it. I think setting boundaries had been easier, right? You can say like, this is what I don't want. This is what I'm okay with. But holding that boundaries, especially for leadership, I think that's quite difficult.
yeah. I think what I run into most is people mistake a boundary in that I'm going to tell you what I don't want you to do. And then when you do it, I get frustrated because I'm like, I already told you that's not what I already told you to not do that. But the difference in a boundary is this is what I can accept. This is what I won't accept. And this is what I will do when that behavior shows up. And so the boundary is not as much about their behavior as it is about my behavior. This is what I won't accept. And when you do this, this is how I will remedy that need. Because really, a boundary is like, what need do I have so that you and I can still be in relationship to one another? Right. I'll give you a silly example. My partner, for a while, wanted to get up and start working out, and he was going to get up super early. And he kept setting his alarm and he kept hitting snooze. And I joke around sometimes and say, like, he hit snooze like 10 times. If he hears me downstairs, he'll be like, I did not hit snooze 10 times. But he was hitting snooze over and over and over again. And I was getting really frustrated. Most people would set a boundary and they would say, you need to stop hitting snooze. That's the boundary I'm setting. But that's not really setting a boundary. That's trying to control his behavior. The boundary looks like this. It's okay that you want to get up early. I can accept that. It's even okay to set your alarm because I will go back to sleep when I hear it. It's not okay to hit snooze 5 times. And if you can't stop hitting snooze 5 times, then I'm going to start sleeping in the other room so that I don't get woken up. So you see, I'm removing myself from the situation rather than trying to control his behavior. So I'm just giving him a heads up that this is what I would like to see. But if you can't do that, that's okay. That's on you. But I am going to take a different action to protect my peace, to protect my needs. My needs are I need sleep. And so he didn't want me to sleep in the other room. So he quit hitting snooze. But let's say he doesn't want to stop hitting snooze. Okay. Then I just remove myself from the situation. That's a boundary. What's okay, what's not okay, and what am I going to do about it?
Mm. But I think it's so important and it's so clear when you bring up that it's not about controlling
Mhm.
someone else's behavior. And I think a lot of times it's human. We just wanted to have that control. I think sometimes like I have a teenager. So that has definitely been a practice for me to, oh, how do I set boundaries so I can actually, maintain my mental health and not get into
Yeah.
a fight, whatever, every single morning. It's that like I get to control my own behavior in a way, right?
Mm.
If you don't do this, and I'm going to remove myself from the situation. And I feel like this control thing has been very difficult for a lot of people to kind of let go because it almost feels very unnatural for people
Mhm.
to do.
Mhm. Yeah, and I mean, I'll be really honest, like, I imagine with, teenagers, it's a teen child, it's really hard to say, "I'm just gonna remove myself from the situation." Like, I don't think that applies the same way, like, "Peace out, I'm just out of the house." But, I think a boundary with a teenager still sounds like, "Hey, it's okay that you wanna spend time with your friend." Can you give me an example of something that might need a boundary around it?
My goodness, I think it's way too many.
Okay, here, I'll come up with one.
Yeah,
Let's say, is it a boy or a girl?
a girl.
Okay. So let's say she is up all night talking on the phone with her friends. I don't know if young
Mhm.
girls still do that, but when I was a young girl, like, that's what I wanted to do,
It's
right? Like I
online
had
chatting now. Yeah,
okay, online chatting. Yeah, I'm so old. I had an actual corded phone in my bedroom.
I know, me too.
Um
Me too.
And so the boundary might sound like it's totally okay to want to connect with your friends. I get how important it is to connect with your friends. It's not okay to be on online chat after 10 p.m. If you insist on staying on chat after 10 p.m., I'm just going to turn the Wi-Fi off.
Mhm.
I'm going to find a way to remove the temptation. And here's when I think about a boundary. What's okay? Dr. Brene Brown talks about boundaries, and I love some of the language she has given us, but she says a boundary is what is okay and what isn't okay. But I often think a little bit differently about it, and I think what is okay is their need. What do they need? What isn't okay is kind of about what do I need and what am I going to do to protect my peace. So
Mm.
what's okay is that she wants to be connected to her friends. That's okay. It's even okay to have online chat until 10 p.m. It's not okay to have online chat after 10 p.m. And to protect my peace, I'm going to just remove the capability at 10
Yeah.
p.m.
You mentioned that Brene Brown, and I remember reading her book, and she mentioned that clear is kind.
Mhm.
And I think that sentence definitely hit me really hard because, again, it's like, oh, I thought being clear is rude sometimes because
Mhm.
I wanted to maintain the peace. And sometimes, if you're being very clear about something, people may not like it, right? You can't expect people to all be like, sure, 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 I'll do whatever you say. Can you explain a little bit about that? And what does that mean in a leadership position? Because I feel like that's a lot about boundaries as well, it has to do with boundaries. Like, what does it look like when I explain something really clear and that's actually the kindness that I get to do for everyone?
Yeah, I think where we probably need deeper discussion on that is clear is kind in that we spend so much effort trying to sugarcoat things so that we don't hurt people's feelings. We spend so much time avoiding hard conversations because we don't want to hurt people's feelings. When really what she means in that is that the kindest thing you can do is to be very clear and honest, but not without kindness, right? You don't want to be clear in a way that is shaming, or some people confuse bluntness with clarity, and there is a difference. You can be very clear. I can tell you, hey, listen, given the work that we're doing and given the training you've been through, the product you are delivering still needs some work. Let's go over together what that work looks like. Let's go over together where I'd like to see the work be a little deeper, right? So you're being clear. It's not measuring up, but you're not saying to them, man, you suck. You're not meeting the standard. Some people would be like, oh, that's clear. You're not meeting the standard. When she says clear is kind, I think what that means would sound more like, I think the product is still missing the mark, but I want to work together to understand why. And I want to hear your perspective to understand where you might need more support, or where you might need more resources, or where you might need more questions answered. It's not blunt is kind, it's clear is kind. And we have to understand the difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it how you talk about the things, the shortcomings that we absolutely need to work on, but then you offer the support, right? We can do this together. So it's still kind because you're there with them. They're not just like figure it out on your own. That's a really big difference. And I think a lot of the leaders in this world definitely need to start adopting more because like a lot of times, like exactly like you said, I think bluntness is like, oh, I'm just being honest, or I'm being clear, but no. But that's just being blunt, and also you're shaming people or you're belittling people or you're devaluing people, and that's not okay.
You said something really important there. You really
Mm,
pulled it out, which is, I'm here with you and you're not alone, right? Like I can be really clear and I'm still here.
yeah.
And we can figure this out together, like we can handle a lot when we know we're not on an island by ourselves. And if my boss comes to me and says, "Hey, listen, this product isn't your best work. Let's sit down and figure out like what's going on and how do we set you up so that it is your best work next time so that you can deliver your best work. Like what's going on, You're not alone in this, I think is huge. You really nailed it.
Yeah. No, I think to tie it back, as you mentioned that a lot of the leaders, especially for a lot of men, that come forward and then told you that they feel very alone when
Mhm.
facing a lot of issues. And I've heard this, I think, from a lot of psychologists and studies. They're saying that men are facing this like loneliness Like from your observation, because you go around and you talk to so many leaders, do you think there is a reason? Is it because it's generational? Is it upbringing? Or is it just kind of the world that's happening right now? Why are men in particular facing this loneliness issue?
I would be really interested to see what people much smarter than me and much more dedicated to the research have to say. But if I had to pick, I really do think it's an amalgamation of different reasons. One, I think what society has labeled as masculinity, I think has shifted for men. I often work with leaders who make the assumption like, oh, women are so much more empathetic. And that's just not true. Like, there's no data to prove that out, that women are more empathetic as human beings. The difference is we've been given permission to practice emotional skills in a way men have not. But when men are given a safe space to practice those skills, they're supported in practicing them, they can see what those skills look like in alignment with their authority, they do amazingly well. And so I think they haven't been given permission to practice the way we have. And then you add all the stuff just about society in general, how much technology is driving our interactions with people, how little, I don't know what it's like there, but like in the US, how few places we can actually go to gather and meet people and build connections and relationships with people. And so I think it's just a bunch of different things kind of all coming together at once, and that I almost feel like it's hard to know where to begin to start digging our way out of that.
I think exactly like you said, yeah, it's really hard to know where to begin because there's so I think it's from all these different aspects, right, of our lives. And I think as women, I feel like this is something that I've never really thought about, but as you were talking, our role as women working alongside these men, what's our job or what can we do to allow that safe space to hold that safe space for them, but also at the same time set our own boundaries and
Yeah.
hold our own peace. I think that a lot of women now are kind of in that space and hoping to do.
It's such a, as you were saying that, the thought that kept popping up into my mind is that's a ton of emotional labor to carry. And Simon and I talked about this a little bit, that because I had skill with navigating emotion, I ended up having to carry a lot of that emotional labor for my peers. And I think the important distinction is it's not my job to be the safe space for every person out there. It's my job to be the safe space for the people in my life who matter. And when I can, when my own bucket is full, it's not my job to be a safe space for them, for anyone to learn these skills at the expense of my own health and mental capacity, right? And so I don't think it's our job to be anything for anyone. Do I want to be able to support my friends and my partner? I mean, my partner is one of the most emotionally evolved people I've ever met. So I don't, that's not a struggle there. But I had plenty of friends who were struggling. And I had one friend who was struggling so much that he would call me regularly talking about really, really severe loneliness and depression, to the point where I was worried about him. And I told him, I can't be this for you. I'm not equipped. I'm not a licensed therapist. I don't have the skills. I don't have the practice. I need you to talk to someone who does. You can't keep using me as that space when you need help that I can't give you. And so I had to set a boundary. I had to say, I can't do this for you. I will be there. I will go with you. I will support you as you're going through it, but I cannot be it, because it was scaring me in a way because
Mhm.
I didn't like I said, I didn't have the skills, I didn't have the training, and I couldn't carry the weight of what if something happens to him and the guilt I would feel because I wasn't enough to help him. But I should never be expected to be enough to help him. That's not where my training is. So I think you have to set really good boundaries because you can't carry that emotional load for everyone.
Wow, I really hope that every single woman, especially younger women, can hear that because I see a lot of women in their early 30s. They really tell themselves they have to be everything. They have to be the perfect daughter, perfect wife, perfect, partner, perfect girlfriend, perfect boss, perfect everything. And then, like you said, they're carrying a lot of that.
Yeah.
But that boundary is just so beautiful, but it's out of kindness, right? Kind of tying back to Claire's kind. You said that I will go with you. We can do this. We can find a therapist, but I can't do this for you. I can't keep carrying this because I don't have the skills. But it's so brave though. I think I have to say it's so courageous to be able to say that to a friend. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard, right? Because I cared about
Mhm.
him. I care about him. I don't want to see him struggling. I don't want to see him hurt. But being a friend means supporting them on their journey, not being not carrying that load. I don't have a better term for it right now. And here's the other thing I'll tell you, like I'm in my 50s and I will tell all these young women in their 30s, you don't have to be anything. Like you will get to your 50s and you will be like, damn, I didn't have to do all that. Cause like that's you just get to a point. You get your 50s is like shedding the snake skin of your life. You're like, "I'm not doing that stuff anymore." And so all these women in their 30s who think they have to be something, you don't have to be anything. Just be you. Like that's the only thing you need to be. You don't have to be perfect and have it all
Mhm.
together. I know that's sounds simplified, but it's true.
Mhm. I think you described it perfectly. I think a lot of us, especially women, we kind of had to go through that journey. It's like we got to be everything, 20s and 30s. We got to be everything for everyone. And
Yeah.
then 40s is like, oh, that doesn't work for me.
'Cause your 40s, you're like, "Man, I'm tired. I don't wanna do this anymore." And then your 50s, you're like, "Oh, no one cared that I stopped doing that." Or the people who really love me don't care. The people who do care, they cared more about their well-being than mine, and that's why they cared. But the people who really care about your well-being, they don't care. They want you to be well. That's the whole point.
Right. And I love that because I'm seeing, I'm talking to women all over the world. And obviously I grew up here in Taiwan, but I was educated in US. But I'm talking to so many different women with different cultural background. Everyone is kind of going through that transition,
Yeah.
which makes it's just incredible because like we're so unique, but at the same time, we're all going through the same transformation. You make 50 sound incredible.
It's not without its own drama, I promise you, but it's better than my 20s, I'll give you that.
Yeah, I do not want to go back to my 20s and 30s.
No,
That's for sure.
you could not pay me to go back to my 20s. Unless I could go back with the wisdom I have in my 50s, then I would be on fire.
Okay. That is true. I do want my
Yeah.
skin back in 20s.
Oh, I know, right? I know.
Um,
They always say, "Youth is wasted on the young," and I'm like, "Yeah, it is."
my goodness. I've heard that before, and now that makes sense to me.
Yeah, you just don't appreciate it when you have it.
Oh my God, makes total sense to me. I really need to make that as a t-shirt and just
Yeah, yeah. And,
uh,
it's so sad, like, I wish we could. It's impossible, but I wish so many young women could learn the lessons they need to learn from those of us who've had to learn them the hard way, but that's just not how life works, right? They have to go through their own journey, they have to learn their own lessons, and it hurts because you don't wanna see them go through the same pain, but that's that's how it works, we just kinda have to, we have to go through it.
Yeah, we almost have to hit rock bottom sometimes to in order to learn. You can't say, "No, your boyfriend sucks." No, they're not gonna listen.
No, no, they won't, they won't. You know, hopefully they learn their lessons in a way that is not lasting damage and pain.
Yeah, that's very true. And again, we're always gonna be there alongside with them no matter what. And I think that's the most that we can do is to just offer support and just be like, "Okay, you do you." Setting boundaries. I do me.
Yeah,
I protect my
right, right.
peace. I absolutely love our conversation. And again, I'm so curious to know, this is the big question that I ask every single guest is what's your definition of soft power?
You know, in the military, we think of hard power as kinetic, right? Anything that is contact, destruction, like that's kinetic power. And so I think of hard power as being very destructive. And I think of soft power as being the things that, if done correctly, actually build, right? It, in the military sense, soft power is how do you use the leverage of the things that aren't kinetic, diplomacy, financial, information. And I think about leadership and soft power the same way. How do I use the leverage of the things that are generative, that build to achieve my objectives? So, how do I use generative of making people feel valued? How do I use generative of sharing information? How do I use generative in the sharing of resources? That's the kind of power that, like I said, is additive and it generates, it does not destroy. And so when I think of soft power, I think, what is the kind of power that builds people up rather than tearing people apart?
That's so beautiful. I have to take a second there. It's just like, okay, absolutely. And I feel like your journey had been so incredible. And you know what's really funny is that I was doing the research and I watched one of your interview and you're we're talking about how you felt like you're definitely not a soft leader, but you're
Okay.
a very effective one, right? It is about being really effective in that situation. So, and that I perked up a little bit. I'm like, okay, she's not soft. Is she going to be
Yeah.
okay doing this podcast? But I think, like you said, even in that sense, like being really effective is that, yeah, exactly. How do you build up, right? How do you utilize a resource and share it and support each other? To me, yeah, that's definitely a really powerful form of soft power.
Yeah, and I think about, like, I wasn't, I wasn't tough, I was strong, and I think there's a big difference. Tough has this connotation of mean and a little bit harsh, but strong has a connotation of grounded and confident. And so I wasn't soft in the sense of, I'm not a very lovey person. I'm not a very, I'm not like I'm not a nurturer. I'm not like an overly affectionate person. I'm very introverted, but I really believed in being clear with people. I really believed in being kind. I really believed in seeing their humanity. And so when I think about not being soft, what I think about is I was fair and strong, and there's a difference.
Mm.
At least I tried to be. You were very kind in saying you weren't soft, you were effective. And I'm like, only the people I led could tell you that. Like, I couldn't tell you that. I mean, we did see success, but leadership is you never really know if you're doing it the right way, right? You hope the outcomes say that, but really it's they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Like, did I make people who needed to feel seen? Did I make them feel seen? Did I make them feel heard? Did I make them feel valued? Only they can answer that.
That's so true. I just wanted to say this is such a beautiful conversation. It's a lot of the things that you said I definitely wanted to process and think about. And I'm learning so much from you, and I absolutely will list all the information in the show notes. Is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners, or our listeners that are around 30s and 50s? They are leaders of the company, startups, and also moms. Is there anything that you'd like to share with them?
Well, one, I will say you're doing a great job. I think we don't hear that enough, right? We don't hear enough, like, it it's ha life is hard, and sometimes I joke around with my partner and I say, "Living with another human is hard." You know? No,
Yep.
and so you're doing a great job, and don't be afraid to reach out and connect to people who are a little further along on the path because they actually can probably give you some tips and tricks to help along the way. And more than anything, I think they can give you perspective of the story you're telling yourself right now might not be true. And I have hindsight to help justify why.
I think that's amazing because you said perspective. You're not saying, oh, I can give you the advice.
Yeah.
Because just like what we said, people don't really want advice sometimes.
Yeah.
They have
Yeah.
to go through life the way they wanted to go through life, but
Right.
perspective, that's that's all they need. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes we need help reframing what's going on in our own lives. And sometimes another perspective can do that. Yeah. Thank you so much. This was so wonderful.
Thank you so much. You definitely had given me so many different perspectives, and I feel so good.
Oh, wonderful. This was fun.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Dee. Definitely update you on everything. And yeah, thank you so much for taking your time.
Thank you.